Welcome to DJNTV and Tuesday Night with Ben Stowe. Now introducing the one and only Ben Stowe.
Yeah, baby! Yeah.
Good evening and welcome to Tuesday Night with Ben Stowe. This is the summer series. That means we've got one show after tonight for the summer of 2023. Tonight, I'll guarantee that Ben Stowe will not be announcing his run for presidency. Just going to throw that out there.
I'm not going to do it. Not running for president. No way.
Ben, we've got more than just two of us.
Yeah, two's, what's it, Three's Company, whatever that old TV show.
There was something, I think I remember that show.
Dating all of us. Anyway, with tonight's topic, when you told me what we wanted to talk about, I thought, what a great topic, and immediately I thought of a very good friend of mine. Honestly, his resume is so long, I always get it wrong. But the other face you'll see on the screen is my very good friend, Dr. Corey Renbarger. He has a doctorate in vocal performance and music and all things, of the actual production of the things we reproduce. And he is a recording artist, and he is also a professor of voice and music and the director of opera theater at a university. So again, Corey has forgotten more about the very things that you and I are going to talk about than probably you and I could hope to know in our lives. And I can say that, Corey has a great fire pit in his backyard, and we've spent a lot of time around that fire pit talking about all kinds of important things, not the least of which being how each of us approaches the industry from the production and the reproduction. He's producing sound in its purest form with his voice. And by the way, in addition to all that, he can absolutely freaking sing, but that's beside the point. And then of course our job is to reproduce music, right? So.
And it's really what we wanted to talk about with instrumentation, microphone, voice, vocal, singing, speaking, is really to kind of dig into that tonight with our show. So for those of you who know a lot about that, this may be one of those shows where you're like, yeah, know that, been there, done that. That's why we have Corey coming on tonight, because he's
he's going
to be able to...
I know what I know. And one of the things I know is that I know a lot of people who know a lot of things that I don't know. So that's one of the things that I know.
So before we started tonight, Corey, we were talking a little bit about how in your line of work, especially when you're talking about it's people who are singing in the operatic world, that they are the amplification is, I don't want to say frowned upon, but it isn't a desirable thing, using the electronic amplification that we take for granted for everything we do. Kind of tell us a little bit about why that would be the case.
Right. It's kind of interesting because when you go back into the history of opera or classical music, which is largely what I focus my life on, it starts way before we had the electronics to even think about the conversation. So really, it was out of necessity, because 400 years ago, the Greeks figured out that you could hear somebody if you built an amphitheater a certain way. And really, that's just where it started. So the craft of singing in that way, the music that was written, the subjects pursued, everything was really centered around the fact that we need to be able to reproduce it without any help. So it was out of necessity, not a artistic opinion or a genre, dictate or anything like that. It was just that's what we had. Mm-hmm. Well, as time went on, just like the Olympics, it's a physical thing. It's muscular learning and building and weightlifting for the throat and these fine little muscles in the larynx. As people got better and better and better, well, 400 years is a long time to get good at something as a human being. And you can about understand, we've all seen jokes online and memes, and we've seen commercials on TV, and everybody knows the Ride of the Valkyries from Wagner and things like that, where it's become really magnificent what the human body is capable of. So we combine all of that art with the idea that, it's also kind of become this goal, this feat. How resonant can we be? How beautiful can we make it? How big of a space can we sing in healthfully? Everybody knows Rob Halford can wail. Not a lot of people realize how much he can do so without a microphone still. And if he hadn't been able to do that, chances are he wouldn't still be doing it at 70 or however old he is. He still sounds great. And a lot of that is because he studied classically. He studied how to sing without a microphone too. So I think most of the best artists know how to use their body without help.
And so without, in a situation like that where he is out there without a microphone and he is able to broadcast, is that just from years of building that bringing it from the diaphragm type of a mentality or whatever it is that works? Or is it something that's more kind of a genetic thing, as that these people are just gifted in being able to broadcast more than building up to be able to do that?
We have about 3 hours, right?
Yeah, exactly. We're just short of that. And Ben wants to talk for 5 minutes at the end. So
That's fine. You know what? I could just listen to Corey talk all night. Honestly, I'm good with that.
Here's my zip answer to that. Yes. So there is absolutely.
Correct answer is it depends, Corey.
There absolutely is the truth. When you're born, you have certain physical characteristics. I'm not going to ever outrun Usain Bolt, no matter how much I train. He's genetically gifted and amazing, and
a freak of nature.
So
man.
there is the thing to say, anybody can learn how to sing to a degree. I'm one of those teachers that I don't really believe in tone deafness, but at the same time, I've seen people that honestly push that belief pretty hard for me. But I believe with the right fundamentals, it's just like learning a language. If you teach a child when their body's developing how to recognize pitch, the brain makes those connections. If you allow them to use the voice young, the muscles will grow the way they need to grow. So I think that people can learn how to sing. So yes, it's about a lot of training to get that to that point, but you're also gifted with what you're born with. So I can't choose to be a tenor if my body isn't, if that's not the size of my vocal folds and that's not the range that my voice sings in. So yeah, I think you can learn quite a bit, and you can certainly learn. The important part is to learn to be healthy and not to just sacrifice. It's just like weightlifters. If you use improper form, your squat will never be what it would be or you might hurt yourself. Certainly. And it won't grow back the right way. So it's just like any other muscle. You treat it right and you can get more out of it, but you can only get so much as you're born with.
You mentioned, of course, tenor. There's a variety of different voices out there that are kind of classified with the different areas. When a person goes back and you're performing in an unamplified arena theater, are there some vocal frequencies that come through, some voices that will come through better than others when you are talking a larger room, but no amplification like that?
Absolutely. And it's different, each, as you guys know way more about this than I do, there are different frequencies that carry in different spaces. There are different acoustics that you have to deal with. Well, we can't really just all of a sudden be a different singer. So a lot of times it's just a matter of us being aware that we're going to get a different sensation, we're going to get a different feeling, and we're going to get a different hearing in the space that we're in. So what we need to adjust is that we need to not adjust so much. So our adjustment is not to overreact. So there's a lot of spaces, singers will come into a space and they'll say, oh, it's so dry in here. Oh, it's so dead. It feels like it's cotton in front of your face. Or, man, this is a live space. Be careful. Don't, because you'll sing into the space and you'll feel like, my gosh, I'm having the best night of my life because I just sound like a boomer in here. And it's actually all just kind of a trick of physics. And the reality is you need to stick to your game. You need to sing the way that you know, just like throwing a baseball. You're not all of a sudden a sidearm pitcher because it feels good for a moment. If you're on the moon, all of a sudden it doesn't change the fact that you still should throw the football the same way just because it flies 10 times farther, So in essence, yes. And then as far as those frequencies go, it's actually a very narrow band. Now, I think you guys probably know more about this than I do, but I do know about vocally, there's a very narrow band of frequencies that we actually sing on. And once we start playing with the harmonic sequence, and once we start talking about overtones, that's when it really gets important. And when the human voice is working correctly, as I'm describing, if we're doing the right things muscularly, we're not overreacting to a space, we're allowing the muscles to vibrate the way they need to vibrate and not doing what's called acoustic damping with the muscles and constricting things, then there's a frequency range. It's somewhere around 2,500 hertz to 3,000, something like that. And it's called the formants of harmonics, where sounds are concentrated and they double, triple, they're more powerful. And when you put together with an orchestra or other sounds, that 2,500 to 3,000 hertz, I believe, that's where not a lot of other instruments double and triple there. So the human voice tends to cut through really clearly there, and you'll be able to tell if a singer is really on their game right there. So that's something I've talked with Ben about when we've joked about, I've sat with him when we've been doing choir things where I'm not even involved. And I'll sit back there with headphones on, and I just want to know what it sounds like, because it's fascinating to me what you guys hear through the machine.
Well, and I love that. One of the things that, as we were doing of course, COVID forced everything to go virtual and live events changed. And we helped live stream some of your performances. One of the things that Corey really said to me, and I want to come back to the 2,500 hertz thing in a second, but as he said, I don't want to hear the microphones. I don't want to know that this needs to sound like an opera in somebody's living room, and it can't sound like electrified sound. And that really stuck with me. I learned a ton. Obviously, he's a teacher, that's his job, but I learned a ton just from the way he interprets sound, and also fundamentally, as you just heard, on a mind-blowing level, the understanding he has of how sound is produced. How many times in the last 7 or 8 years we've been doing shows have we ever used the words vocal folds? My recollection is zero. So
I'll add them up, but I'll get back to you.
Yeah, we'd have to go back and look through a couple hundred shows. But
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we never used those words.
Don't think so.
So I learned so much about how the sounds that I have been professionally amplifying for more than 2 decades, now 3 decades, were produced. And I'd like to think that, honestly, it made me a better engineer because I understood better the material. But just a funny topic is, one of the things we've talked about in years past is one of the sounds that tends to be very piercing to the human ear, a sound that is very sensitive to the human ear, is 2.5K, 2,500 hertz. And it's not by any coincidence. We are built, we are, evolved and developed to be sensitive right where the voice tends to be prominent. Because it's our primary form of communication, and that is the topic we've talked about in a few times. So I just wanted to point out, Corey, that you're right on the money with that, and that's one of the reasons we tend to be very careful with sound systems in that range. A, to make room for voice, but 2, to avoid sounds from being harsh or grating.
Well, it's funny too, because if you take the frequencies, as I understand it, on a voice, a bass might sing up to maybe 400 or something, whereas a soprano can go to 1,000. But you take that overtone thing, I think they go octave, fifth, fourth, you go up that way. They all coalesce in that band really well. And, anecdotally, I know that we were in a choir thing, and Ben and I, he had me listen to something. He said, "What do you think?" I said, there just feels like there's a dead spot in there somewhere. It just doesn't feel live to me. And he's like, "Oh, here, let me do this." And he moved some dials around, and I was like, "That's it. Perfect." And I asked him what he did, and he says, "Well, I just kind of upped the 1,800 to 2,800. I just kind of balanced that a little bit higher." And I said, "There you go." Math. It actually is true.
So, exactly. Thank you, Corey. That's such a great way of framing this, is that we are fruits of the same tree here, that we would have nothing to reproduce if there was not production in the first place. Now we can talk about all the synthesized sounds, and we could talk about the synthesizer as an instrument. We could talk about auto-tune. I'll probably make Corey throw up here. Sorry. But,
I had a conversation earlier today with my daughter about it. Literally, we were listening to something on the radio. Go on.
Yeah, no, I can only imagine. But something else Corey and I have in common too is being dads, and talking about how to do that well. But anyway, I think that all of this, really, the modern music industry, and whatever the flavor of the time is, because music has certainly changed, and what charts has certainly changed. 50s sounds different than the 70s, and so on and so forth, and what's charting today sounds different. But all of that is owed to the very, very first people who sang, who created music with voice. And I don't know this for a fact, Corey. You probably undoubtedly have a better understanding of the history of music, but I have to believe that we created music with voice before we did it with anything else. That, banging a stick on a rock and finding shorter sticks had higher pitches than longer sticks probably came later, right? I don't know any of this for a fact, but I'm just saying that we said, okay, well, we can make these sounds with our voices, and then later we started creating and building instruments like, tools.
Well, you've heard me say this to my students, Ben. It's a little egocentric as a vocalist, but I teach this in most of the classes that I teach. Whereas if you talk to about any instrument, about the best compliment you can give them is, "Boy, you made that sing." You know, whether it's a pianist, a violinist, a trumpeter, you know, "Boy, you really made that piece sing," because it connects with the human emotion. We're all trying to reproduce the human experience. Like music is communication. Music is telling something. And whether it's tone poems of Liszt that are literally supposed to be pastoral meadows and whatever, or Ride of the Valkyries, where we're literally supposed to hear the winged, you know, whatever is coming from Valhalla, we make interpretive moments happen for us. You know, even, you know, listening to Queensryche, you know, there's moments when the guitar riff comes in and you can just feel the chaos of the seas boiling because something's happening, you know, and you make a decision and you picture something. It's just what we are. What do they say? Us and dolphins. We picture something, literally, and we will tell ourselves a story. And as a performer, it doesn't matter what the audience sees. Like, there's no wrong answer. If they get a different story or a different picture from what we present, still, they're getting a story. That's our job, is to communicate, and that's what they heard, you know, and
Yeah, what does red look like? You know, we all know what red looks like, but how would you describe it to somebody else? Well, it looks red, you know, and what does that look like to you? You know, by the way, you mentioned stories and you mentioned Queensryche, so I wasn't going to tell a story, but since you brought it up, I have to do
Why
it.
that popped in my head. That's obviously the band that came to mind when I saw your face on the screen.
Can't imagine why. So Queensryche, of course, you know, well-known rock band. We've made the cables and things they made on tour. We've supplied them some of the gear they use. We've worked with them a few times, and they were coming to a venue near us, and we were working with them to give them support for sound and whatever. And Corey happens to be a big fan, and so he came and helped us as a stagehand. You know, and he was just another guy helping load in the show, and he was just around, and, you know, and then of course bands at tour see lots of stagehands and probably don't give it much thought, you know, but these were people we knew and had a relationship with. And so I went over to some of the guys and I said, "Hey," I said, "by the way, did you see that stagehand over there? You know, that guy, the really handsome one, you know?" So I said, that's actually not what I said, Corey, but yeah. So I said, you know, but I said, "Hey, you see that stagehand over there?" I said, "He's actually a doctorate of vocal performance and an opera singer." And these guys' jaw hit the floor, and then they wanted to go meet him. They were like, "No kidding?" Like, wow, they were so impressed. I'm like, "Yeah, this dude can like sing you under the table." And they're like, "Get out, that's cool." So anyway, it was kind of fun, you know, for me to connect those two universes and to kind of get to brag on my boy a little bit. So, you know, but yeah, so. Anyway.
Well, I definitely couldn't out Queensryche them. They were pretty awesome. So.
Oh yeah, they do what they do great. Yeah, and I think that's, you know, I think they're very talented, and I think they're very good at what they do, and I think that's why they have a respect for what you do too. I think that, you know, people who are good at something respect other people who are good at something. You know?
They put on a hell of a show.
They do. Yeah, they do. They have a great show. I think Corey had a good time that night. So yeah.
Nice. So we've talked vocal quite a bit here. For those, I think it's time. Let's put that graphic up, Ben, where you showed the frequencies and the different where instrumentation and vocal, because we've been referring to that quite a bit. Let's kind of dig into that one a little bit, and then I want to kind of drift into instrumentation, specifically in the orchestral realm, and how much of that would kind of fit into what we're hearing and how to make that sound as natural as possible.
Well, before I bring the other slide up, I want to start with this one because I think it really sets that up really well. When we look at sound in the simplest form, and we could talk about, you know, complex sine waves and fast Fouriers, but we're not going to. We're going to just look at one frequency for the sake of understanding it. And what we see, and of course, a lot of us know that sound travels in waves. And of course, the distance for a complete wave to be produced, compression rarefaction, is the wavelength, right? So here we can see both of these are showing the wavelength from peak to peak or trough to trough, right? Or from the 0 point here, I guess you'd say. And then of how big the wave is the loudness, that is the, you know, amplitude, you know, that's you know, but the key thing here when we're talking about all of this stuff is how often a complete wave happens in a given period of time. And the unit of time we use is seconds. And the number of times a complete wave happens within a second is measured in hertz, named after Heinrich Hertz, in case you're curious. Basically what we're going to talk about is, like I said, a shorter stick makes a higher pitch sound than a longer stick because the wavelength is shorter, and that makes a higher frequency. So anyway, I just wanted to just clarify for all of this, when we talk about frequency, what are we talking about? And that really brings us back to what Corey was talking about with rooms, and we can start to understand the physical nature of how sound operates, and we'll see how this correlates to mechanical reproduction with drivers as well in a minute. So here's the chart, I think, John, that you were talking about.
Yeah.
And Corey, you mentioned, of course, here we have sort of an oversimplification: vocals male, vocals female. But we could break that down in baritone, tenor, alto, soprano, whatever. And by and large, we tend to kind of chop everything off below 100 hertz for most vocalists. We have high pass filters on our board. We're generally ignoring anything below, we'll call it ballpark of 100 hertz. But I can tell you that number can move from 80 to 120 depending on who the vocalist is. And there are some rare exceptions. The Psychedelic Furs, and of course Richie from the Oak Ridge Boys, he's the Papa guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's digging way below 100. He's digging way down there. We'll actually send Richie to the subwoofers. So that's a whole different cup of tea there. But as a general rule, this is where you'll see that range. And I think I'm going to stop talking because I just want to just hear whatever comes out of Corey's mouth when he sees this graph.
Well, first of all, I see, I don't think it's actually an oversimplification that much. I think that they're, like I said, when you take away the overtones, which is a huge part of singing resonantly, which is why we don't like amplification sometimes. It's not that we don't like it, it's that we don't like it if you can't do it without it. If it's worse than the lipstick on a pig thing. There's not even a pig to begin with.
Corey, can you give us a definition of overtones? Because you're.
I thought he was going to give us a definition of a pig. No.
I like overtones.
So
here I sit with my John Deere shirt in the middle of Iowa right now. But anyway, so
if I were to sing there, at A440, it's going to ring again at 880. It's going to ring again at whatever my math.
So when he says A440, that is 440 hertz, by the way. So that one happens to line up. Middle C is like 261, so we'll just ignore that. But
right. So if we were to sing at one pitch, typically, if it's in line, if that sine cosine wave, the compression rarefaction cycle, that cycle happens. So 440 of those will happen. I should go down a little bit, 220 for me or whatever. Like let's say I'm singing there. So I have 200 of those. Another at 400, if I'm singing correctly, that note will also be heard in the harmonic sequence in the room, et cetera, et cetera. And that will build upon itself. Now, the more instruments, the more vocalists, the more things bouncing around. They say, of that pretty little wave that Ben put up, it's not so pretty when you look at it as a vocal sound, because there's actually 32 different chunks that go together to make that perfect wave. Now, we never make that perfect wave because we're imperfect balls of meat, really, and there's all this, we're all so varied and different. So if we were to separate it out, they say that on average there's 32 partials in a human voice. So it's this weird kind of wonky, irregular wave. And the more regular we can make that, the more sounds that are happening within phase, the more of that overtone we're going to get out of that sound. So the more the more things that match up, that height that he said, that amplitude, that'll just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, the more that they're in the same left to right phase. So that really is our goal. And it's not that we have a machine, and it's not that we knew how to do that ever. They figured these things out with pieces of string and the sunshine and stuff like that. It built itself over time, where human beings are capable of amazing things if we just keep refining and keep refining. So that's what I'm talking about with the overtone series. It's like when we're singing cleanly, it amplifies itself because of physics.
So the ability to sing and to sing at that, getting as close to the assembling those 32 parts to make a coherent sound, that would really become a struggle then for many microphones out there, which is one of the reasons why you're saying things don't sound as natural, is because
Correct.
they just cannot reproduce that much.
Or they reproduce certain parts of it so well that other parts get left out. Or it can also turn somebody that cannot reproduce it at all, and it will double, triple, quadruple, fill in gaps where the person might be singing very small. Now, and I don't want to dog on anybody here. I'm a huge Megadeth fan, believe it or not, and Dave Mustaine's voice is actually very small. He does not sing loudly. He does not sing resonantly at all. But it's a very cool, interesting voice with a lot of creative expression and colors, but they're tiny. So, because he doesn't sing with a whole lot of space. Whereas, the whole thing, I feel, because he sings essentially like classical. He sings really loud all the time. And it's not a better or worse thing. It's just that's what needs to happen in those sonic works with voices. We're talking like 20. We want to get 20. Because when those say that's not really a thing, but you swear you hear them sometimes. And it's because it's almost like that landscape is just fake. Or like you listen to those working spaces where you try to capture the space. You capture the ambient sound
as a fake, like convolution or something. And we were talking, I mean, I can't remember if we got into the topic of the Hagia Sophia or not, but there's, when we're talking about taking out below 100, we're only talking about the voice portion. You definitely don't want to take out the rest because, like Corey said, it's something zero in engineering. Take out what is necessary to take out. The fundamental, the thump of a kick drum, that's going to happen 50, 60, So there's a lot of things.
One of the things you'll notice is a lot of instruments, their fundamental frequencies, so things, harp, flute, violin, maybe, and that's bass there. And that's why, according to physics, you get a tell us there's no way you're going to hear her. Yeah, sure. So that if she's singing correctly, that formant, that funder, if there's two equal sounds and one of them sounds human, your brain will latch on to the human baby. Like, it doesn't matter how many cars are going by.
Similar to how we see faces when we look at a receptacle or the front of
anthropomorphizing sound.
Yeah, we're tuned to. And I just want to take what Corey said here, because it's important that everything has a place in the mix and live in its place. So that's a really good. Still need to make a place for everything in my mix.
And a very good voice, and they have a range who didn't have that. But when you have someone like that, how are you able to handle them with your board?
With understanding the source material, right? The microphone has to be, vocalists sing on different microphones, sing the same phrase, but on different microphones, and different microphones respond to different singers in different ways. And we don't have time for that today. So let's just break it down into basically, we'll simplify it into say there are microphones that are designed for vocal capture. There are other microphones designed specifically for various instruments. And even within vocal capture microphones, we have dynamic microphones and we have condenser microphones. Again, don't have time to dive into that topic, but we've done it
before, yeah.
So please go look for those videos and you'll see how the difference between like a passive moving coil with a magnet versus, a membrane, basically in an electrified circuit in an electric condenser or something, Two is, having proper gain structure. We have to make sure, that the microphone itself can withstand the amount of acoustic energy. And we measure microphone sensitivity in millivolts per Pascal, and the Pascal represents the acoustic energy, if you will, being presented to that microphone. And if the microphone can't handle it, garbage in, garbage out. If your microphone can't handle that level, nothing you're going to do after that's going to sound good because your microphone's already distorting or destroying the sound you're trying to capture. But then the next step, and we've talked about gain structure a few times, such an important topic, is making sure that the system gain and the various stages of gain are equipped for that as well. And a really great example that comes to mind, Corey, is when we were doing that outdoor sequence, we were filming the outdoor opera with the women from your university program. I forget the number. I'm so sorry. I know you're probably just ready to disown me because I don't remember the song they sang. But
Carmen.
Thank you. Yes.
Carmen, the card trio.
Yes. Thank you for
All
bailing me out.
coupon.
Hey man, to me it was just frequencies, but anyway, so we had body packs and mics concealed on them because they're out in the middle of the woods singing their parts, and I had set these mics based on my experience of people singing, professional singers, excellent singers, and yet none of the singers I had ever worked with, even Grammy winners, whatever, were opera singers. And we started the first take, and I very quickly was like, whoa, 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 time out, time out, time out. I need to adjust those packs. Like, you guys are burying these things. So, credit to Corey as a teacher. He had taught these women how to absolutely lay the wood to it, and they were crushing these things out of the park. So I had to go back and adjust the gain structure in the pack, because we take that analog signal from the microphone into the pack, and then that preamplifier modulates it onto the FM carrier signal, which goes to the receiver and on down the chain. So I think that probably adequately answers the question. Make sure the microphone is not doing any harm to the signal, and make sure your gain structure is capable of delivering the signal intact to the board. And from there, do what's necessary.
And on the singer's end of this too, I mean, I don't know if we can mention brand names and stuff on this as we get in trouble.
Go for it.
Sure.
We don't. John has sponsors. I don't. Go ahead. Do whatever. I don't care.
But
I mean, just like
Kids won't ever be able to eat again, but whatever, as long as you can live with that. So
just like there will always be a Sennheiser 600 series headset, there will always be one of those
I
somewhere.
love Sennheiser, by the way, so that's good.
But as a microphone, like I think they've been around for like 70 years. Those SM58s. Like opera singers know they're not going to break those, to what he just said.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also told that you have to actually sing into them. You can't.
They're not a very sensitive microphone at all, and they. I think
they will reproduce accuracy without blowing everything out.
Yeah, they're not very sensitive.
I will say, especially because of this pandemic era, us in the opera world having to teach online a little bit or having to do things like that, it was kind of a chore to find microphones that weren't just immediately, without having to be an audio engineer and learning what to tweak.
Sure.
To just find a good sound mic. It was tough. So I mean, this is important.
We've done some mic shows in the past, so if you can talk for one more minute, I'm going to find one of those shows. I'm going to bring up a graph of a vocal mic. To show how they have, oh, look at that. I already got it.
I was going to say, Ben, you're kind of talking right on through this, introducing your image.
Yeah. So I'll just, you know me. I never shut up. So, all right. Let me just throw this. So here we can see the frequency responses of a few vocal microphones. And you can see here, this is the frequency response of the SM58 he was talking about. Now we're not getting into the sensitivity, we're not getting into the millivolts per Pascal, but we can see that, and even if we compare that to an 835 or Beta 58 or any of these, setting aside, what we're looking here is proximity effects, so disregard those dotted lines. But what we can see is they're all kind of designed to produce roughly the same thing. And look at that, there's this presence boost, up here. Where we would want to bring out some of that crispness and definition of vocals and frequencies we probably don't produce as well. And of course, we have a built-in roll-off here right at 100. Imagine that. Mm-hmm. So the mic manufacturers have basically built these mics purposefully not to be flat, but it's, again, they're designed to capture the human voice.
And as Corey was saying, they've been bulletproof for the mobile entertainment industry for a long time. So it's interesting that became kind of
break an SM58.
Isn't that one that they've dropped off of parking ramps and things like that? I think there was one of them I saw an old.
But SM58 wrong, it will dent.
It'll be.
And I know that the tech pit loves it when you do this new fad of doing the mic drop.
So I just worked with a country singer over the weekend, a guy that everybody would know, so we're not going to do the name drop thing. We'll just do the mic drop thing. And it was obviously a planned part of the bit, but and and the guitar player does his thing, and then he holds out the mic and he drops it, and the lead singer reaches out and catches it. It was just very well choreographed. But it was pretty funny. I actually laughed. So the only people who do mic drops are people who don't buy microphones.
Oh, funny. So Ben, you mentioned earlier when you were mixing with the gentleman, I think it was the Oak Ridge Boy, the bass singer there, that sometimes in that case you have to actually talk a little bit about the difficulty at times of being able to manage specifically a vocal to have that sound be accurate.
Well, it can be, but it doesn't have to be. I think this comes back to good engineering of the system in general, most of which should response. Now, there are all kinds of things that are done within the design and the build of the box. And we've talked about this even recently about time alignment of drivers, so that we have coherence and linearity from the box. But then, of course, when we take hard time alignment, so.
Just hang on.
Still on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hello, everybody. Well, let's talk about John while he's gone. Wait, this is being recorded. Maybe not. All right. So just talk amongst yourselves, everybody. By the way, Corey, I don't know if you know, this is your first time on the show, so we appreciate you being on, but there is also a live chat going on, so they are interacting with each other while we're doing this. So.
Oh no, are they throwing barbs?
Oh, probably not. Listen, Corey was also a college football player, so I wouldn't talk a lot of trash. He could bury you in like a fence post.
Now, who's this bozo?
Yeah. No, I think everybody's just happy.
Stingers and their egos.
They're probably happy they're not seeing so much of me. They're probably happy somebody else is talking. All right, how we doing, John?
We're back. We're back. We had some buffering there, so you guys everything should be back up there.
All right, so let's just hop back and we talk about time aligning with subwoofers and tops.
Yep.
Because, for example, my system is crossed over at 80 hertz, which means that the subwoofers are 80 hertz and below, and the tops are 80 hertz and above. And then like I said, there's some kind of a roll off there with the crossover at 12 dB per octave or whatever that crossover happens to be. Well, if that crossover is occurring, at a point where vocal reproduction is still occurring, and we now have a shift in phase due to improper alignment, that can absolutely be hugely problematic. And in fact, it's another reason that people used to really dislike passive crossover networks inside speakers, because in a two-way box, a top and a let's say like a horn and a 12 or a horn and a 15, that crossover inside the box is probably around 1600 hertz, which happens to be right in the meat of what Corey was telling us is very important. So, and it happens to fall right squarely in the middle of the fundamentals of the human vocal range, right? But obviously passive crossover networks have gotten much better, and nowadays most people are using active speakers which have built-in active crossovers, and so that problem has been largely mitigated. But yeah, it definitely can be more problematic when we're trying to reproduce any sound, voice or any sound, through multiple speakers. We need to have a linear, coherent, time-aligned sound for the most accurate and transparent reproduction. Everything else is not going to sound right, and believe me, maybe a drunk guest at a wedding isn't going to know, but Corey's going to know.
Sure.
Well, and from what you
he's called me out,
From what you just said, like to clarify also, I'm not saying that singers can produce 2500 hertz. That's really high. That's only, like I said, that's only a harmonic overtone. It's that fundamental frequency. And when you were talking about auto-tune earlier, auto-tune doesn't reproduce that overtone.
Right.
So when you hear that bleep, when you hear that little perfection slide or that whatever, it sounds very hollow to my ear, because there is no overtone series above that. And then sometimes I feel like they're trying to overlay that, like in the West Side Story that just came out. I was so happy because I think that's one of the best musicals ever written musically, just wonderful music. And I was so happy that they were very faithful to it when Steven Spielberg re-released this with the new cast and everything. Great production, great movie. And I was in my office and we were playing a track from there, and one of my students says, it's too bad they auto-tuned it. And I didn't quite hear it until then. And now I cannot unhear it.
Oh, no.
I cannot unhear it because I had only been listening to it on cheap speakers at that time. And that was the first time I was on a decent set of speakers. And yep, I can hear it. There's that empty spot where the computer just doesn't know. It's not quite reality, you know. And so
Real or
that's
memorized.
tough. It's not that auto tune is the devil. It's just that it's not human. You know.
Well, this is I don't want to get down on the rabbit trail of AI either, but I think this is another thing we start talking about AI and what AI can do. The A is artificial, and to me, it's always going to be really impressive what our species, us walking bags of salt water, or what'd you call us, balls of meat, But I mean, what we do, we are, we're this organic lump. And yet we are able to learn and develop these skills and the physiology. And what's, I think, both really fascinating and wonderful and sad all at the same time is we can only do it for a little while.
Right.
This is not a algorithm that can be reproduced or duplicated. It is something that is inherent and lives. And, humans have such a distinct voice too. We can identify each other as individual members of a species. With 8 billion on the planet, you can identify someone by their voice. And that is truly fascinating to me.
It's almost impossible to find two exact same vocal patterns out of
Yeah.
8
So
billion.
it's that beautiful imperfection that is. So when I think about that in that context, and then I think about the electronic side of it, it raises the stakes for me, where I say, I got to get this right. I can't treat every voice the same, because they're not, And honestly, I've learned much of that in the last 4 years from Corey, despite 26 previous years of doing this professionally.
It's an interesting thing though too, Ben, because there are some artists you don't want to hear acoustic. That part of their sound is you. Part of their sound.
I wasn't going to talk. You're right. There's some artists I do.
That's
I
okay.
give them a little help,
But that's okay. People that don't apologize for that. People that's part of what they do. That's fine. It's just you just have to be authentic for what you are doing and who you are. And it's beauty is beauty. Grandma should be moved whether she knows the physics or not. Like it's about communication. So.
Guys, we've only got a couple of minutes left. And Ben, I want to take a little bit of a sojourn, if we could, since we have someone who is as close to a vocal expert as you and I are ever going to get to, really. I mean, let's face it.
I think the world would agree he's a vocal expert. I think that's I think that's an appropriate term. So
even as mobile DJs, we're not singing, but we're obviously we're using our voice for making announcements and things. Is any tips on how to be able to use our voice more effectively that a mobile DJ who's making announcements between songs and doing their little things, any tips to be able to broadcast or to speak better when it comes to those types of events?
Right. This is another big question. And this is something that I tried to put together when I was living in New York. I had an excellent colleague out there. His name is Kevin Jackson. He's a wonderful recording artist. I think he's out of Elmira, New York now. And he'd recorded, I think, one of Limp Bizkit's albums and things like that. And Jars of Clay, I think, regardless, we would talk about that idea of, what do we do for these artists? And he actually put together an entire curriculum out there where we were working, and there's entire classes for how to do this and how to not only be behind the desk, but how to be behind the microphone. And it's something I've talked about doing here in Bemidji, and just basically just getting used
I'll go. If you do, I'll go.
just getting used to resonating with
Never stop learning, viewers. I know you come to the show because you think I'm an expert. I never want to stop learning.
Well, as same with me. I'm constantly learning. I was just at a clarinet conference. I mean,
Okay, but why? Honestly,
we can learn every. There's things to learn everywhere.
Please don't tell Dr. Lowry I said that. Sorry. But why?
As a broadcaster, I think the important thing to just remember is that if you start to feel strain, most likely you're doing something wrong. It's just like at the gym. There's tired, and then there's I'm straining. You know, you get good form and you really get the burn on that one muscle that you want. But then if 7 other things are burning that you don't want, well, maybe that's wrong. And I think what a lot of people end up doing is they end up straining, or they talk too high, or you can feel that, like, a lot of, for me, you notice it right under the jaw, on the base of the tongue. If you're using those muscles up there too much to strain, and overusing that neck, that would be my quick and dirty answer. Like, this was a whole degree's worth of information to get somebody to, really feel that. But you get that up here sound, where we call this the call, or hello there, that kind of upper sound. As a broadcaster, I feel like people should be able to access that whenever they want. If your voice gets a little bit tired, you can just kind of pitch it up just a little bit higher without people noticing too much, and you won't be pressing down on those muscles of the neck that get tired. Now, you have to admit, you know what I'm talking about, when you've been talking too much and it just starts to creep up and up on you.
Yes.
You got to get up and over it. So that would be my quickest answer to a broadcaster, is learn how to speak up into your voice a little bit, and don't try to be that cool husky dude down here that we.
Well, actually, that's what Ben does sound like.
If you're not getting paid $500,000 to do a Disney voiceover, keep it out of here. Get up in your actual voice.
Wait, does Disney pay $500,000?
I don't know. I just pulled a number out of a hat because they've been hiring nothing but superstars. So I'm imagining they're getting paid through the nose.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun to have a vocal workshop for mobile entertainers.
Right.
That would be good. Ben, I think this is something we need.
Very present for it. I think they would work their butts off. So.
You know what, John? I know where Corey's fire pit is, so come on up and throw some studs back and see if we can talk him into it.
Yeah, so, this could be a neat idea. We'll have to put some thought into that. So, gentlemen, our time is up tonight. It's been a great show, and it's gone incredibly fast here this evening, and great information. We had a good crowd. Thank you guys for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Corey, for giving up your Tuesday night to come hang with us and give a lifetime's worth of knowledge. Again, I love that John's given me this privilege of doing this show for the past 7 or 8 years, and I love that we've shared a lot of knowledge. And like I said at the beginning of the show, sometimes the most important things to know is what you don't know. I just love the Rolodex of friends that I have that know so much more than I do.
Yeah, good information, and I got a whole new appreciation for that. Trying to make things sound as naturally as possible. I would have never. That would have never been.
It's harder than you think.
It would be, but I would have never looked at it from that perspective, because we're so in our world that auto tune is almost revered.
Right.
It is.
And if it's done shamelessly and really well, and not try to be fake, it's a tool. It's a tool, and it is usable. But somebody like Lady Gaga, I think it was Joanne, that album, she turned it off. Like, they didn't use it, and I don't think she uses it much usually, but they turned it off entirely. I love that album because it's just raw vocal. There's something beautiful about that, just imperfection, like Ben was saying. So it's not that we're trying to demonize it. It's just that we work really hard to not have to do it, and we want to keep that aspect too.
Yeah. Great stuff.
A shameless plug here,
please.
Yeah, tomorrow night in Bemidji here, we're doing a Handel's Messiah sing-along at First Lutheran Church. It's at 7:30, and it's going to be, I'm going to be singing in it, a few of my colleagues, Dr. James Boyer and Dr. Jennifer Olson.
Dr. Joe, yeah.
Will be doing some of the conducting, and some of our summer master's program students here will be conducting and singing, and everybody's welcome. Bring a score if you've ever done Messiah. I know summer isn't a usual Messiah time, but it's a great piece of music.
Corey, I have a question for you relative to that. So, and by the way, Dr. Jillick, Dr. Joe, fantastic professionals as well. I mean, but most of our viewers are not in Bemidji or even in Minnesota. Some are not even in the United States. We have a good viewership in several other countries. So for those not able to make it to Bemidji by tomorrow night, is this live streamed at all or anything?
I don't think this one's live streamed, but
okay, dude.
The person that could make it happen is
well, the person who could make it happen is in Iowa. I'm on the road, sorry. So you may notice this is not my usual studio. So yeah.
But yeah, we do live stream a lot of stuff from here in Bemidji. So if anybody's interested, just look up Bemidji State University. Throughout the year, we live stream dozens of events and concerts and stuff. So,
and if you ever get a chance to hear Corey sing, you should. Again, it gave me not just an appreciation. That's not the word. It gave me a mandate to be better as an audio engineer.
Sure, I could see that.
Because I saw the process that led to him and his students producing operatic, performance, and I said, I have to be better.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I understood the assignment. It was I have to be better. So it will change the way you think about sound, just as you said, John, tonight. The show changed how you think about sound. I think the next step of that is to experience it live and to say, I have to be better.
Yeah,
I
could see.
Part of this world, I did this. Huh?
If you punch my name into Google or Spotify, my colleague Dr. Stephen Carlson and I recorded an album with Soundmaster Productions. That's David Tremblay down in Minneapolis. That'll be on there, so you can listen to us playing with these electronic toys a little bit, and trying to capture natural sound.
And as a bonus, I think you get like 0.002 of a cent for every stream on Spotify. And I know that,
there you go.
I know that Steve Carlson wants some more acoustic panels. He's talked to me about some more acoustic panels for his home piano room. So, stream it lots, people, please.
Yeah, there are.
These are massive, as you said.
Yeah, so if 1,000 of you stream it, that's 2 cents. So you're gonna. So everybody's gotta get the word out. Everybody,
There you go.
Tell everybody you know to stream Corey's music, please.
Excellent. Up next at 10 o'clock Eastern in just a few minutes here, Howie's going to be, it's Tuesday night music show. And Howie will be part of the discussion, but you got Jay and Brian and John are going to be coming in and talking about some different topics within that music realm, because it's, again, the Tuesday night music show. And they'll be doing their record roundup at the beginning of it, so you guys can check that out at djntv.com/chill. And it'll be going on in about 3 minutes. Guys, we got to wrap things up. So, Corey, thank you very much for being on. I learned a lot, and it was a fun conversation. Ben, safe travels, my friend. Thank you, and we will see you guys next month in August. Good night, everyone.